Hey everyone, Read Reviews here. It is White Rice Wednesday, which means time for my Survivor recap. So to recap on tonight's episode, it is the merge! So congrats to everybody who's made the merge. That is such a big accomplishment to make it that far in the game. And now it's basically, every man for himself. So they have the merge feast and everything's all like rainbows and unicorns until the punches come out. It's going to be a war tonight. The lines are completely drawn that Chris and Dominic are reunited. There's going to be conflict, and it's basically going to come down between one of them two tonight. And Dominic wants Chris gone. He's sick of his high and mightiness, and he just thinks he's full of himself, and I'm getting sick of Chris as well. Like, his whole game is just based on the fact he couldn't take Dom's criticism. But Chris actually finds a clue to an idol in his buff, and I gotta say, it's pretty creative on production's part to hide the clue in somebody's buff, because anybody could have grabbed it. So Chris has sort of like an idol and find an advantage. He has a clue to an immunity idol, but it's on Ghost Island. So I'm thinking, does he automatically go to Ghost Island then? Apparently a boat will pick Chris up and he'll get to be on Ghost Island for a few hours at night. But can he do it while everyone's asleep? Like, will somebody catch him? Like, that's the mystery and suspense behind it. And Wendell and Dominic decide to talk with Chris to maybe, as Wendell put it, maybe him be a mediator between them two, see if they could work out some of the conflict. And Dominic wants to keep Navidi strong right now so they can have the numbers. And I agree with that to an extent. I do think that, Navidi needs to keep the numbers, but at the same time, they need to get rid of Chris so there'll be some kind of peace around camp. And the peace talks don't work because Chris is completely... It seems like he's, closed-minded. Wendell asked him, which of the three Malolos, that being Michael, Jenna, or Libby, would you want to vote out at the next tribal council? And he couldn't give a name. And that's very alarming. I mean, Chris said he can't give a name right now. I haven't been able to talk to much people, have a relationship with anybody. I get that, but you could have just named a random name just to please them for a minute, and try to save yourself. But whatever. So Chris actually does make it to Ghost Island. I give him some credit for being able to get on the boat at night without anybody watching him. And Chris finds JT's idol from Survivor Game Changers, and we all know what happened with that idol, that he went home with an idol in his pocket. So Chris the idol's right there in plain sight. He didn't have to do any work to find it. It was right there. But he can wager his vote, because the thing is with JT's idol, it's only good for that tribal council. But if Chris wagers his vote, he can play a game where he can increase the idol's power for multiple votes. Because usually an idol's good till any spot in the game, but this idol's only good for that tribal council. So, if Chris is wrong, he can, potentially lose his vote at a crucial vote for him. So he opens the first one, and the idol's good for the next two tribal councils. So it's good for the merge vote, and it's good for the next one. And then Chris opens the other one, and it's a no vote. So Chris doesn't get to vote at the next tribal council, but he also gets to keep the idol. So now, let me see. Chris then tells everybody that Dominic has an idol, and not just the fake idol. He showed him that he has an idol. And Libby and Jenna have a talk about Chris and Dominic, about this war between them. They want to get rid of Chris as well, but they think Chris is more loyal and they could trust Chris more, so they think that they should go with Dominic. But at the same time, from only having three Malolos left in the game, they feel pretty good right now that the target's not on them, because usually at any point they just, pick the minority, what would you call it? The minority or the least amount of people left in the game. I don't know the right word for it, but they just pick them off one by one and vote them off, and then it's just every man for himself then. So the immunity challenge, they had to stand on this beam, and they had to hold this pole over their head that held that had this I guess a tiki relic on it, and during intervals they would move to a narrow part of the balance beam. And it actually was girl power tonight, because I think there was 3 or 4 girls when the immunity challenge was winding down, and then coming between Libby and Kellen actually won the first immunity challenge. So congrats to Kellen on that immunity win. It's definitely well deserved after all she's been through going to Ghost Island and stuff. So Chris actually does a bold move when they come back from the immunity tribe, and he takes everybody but Dominic and Wendell to the water well to discuss, basically saying, okay, we're getting rid of Dominic, right? But just in case, he plays an idol, they want to get rid of Wendell, because that's Dominic's, basically he has other alliance members that Chris doesn't know about, but Wendell's basically his main alliance member. So in case Dominic plays an idol, then they'll get rid of Dominic's alliance member. And Wendell then talks to Dominic and reveals to him that he actually has an idol. And again, it's pretty bold of someone to admit to, even if you're that close to somebody in the game, it's still pretty bold to reveal to somebody that you have an idol. I would keep that to myself. And Jonathan tells Dominic that Chris plans to split the votes tonight, so that gives Dominic some leverage that he knows that they're going to split the votes tonight. And Wendell tries to pitch to everyone that with Chris around, it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. Like, he's basically just calling all the shots for people. And the Navidi girls have a conversation about maybe not even going with that vote between Chris or Dominic. Maybe they want to shake things up and go with Malolo. So they talk about who they should get rid of, and they think they should get rid of Libby because, as Desiree put it, Michael is the obvious threat. They would expect it more to get rid of Michael because he's like the handsome the handsome challenge beast and everything, and he'd be good in challenges, so it would be more obvious to get rid of him. But with Libby, we've seen her, she's a strategic threat and social threat. All she has to do is smile and everybody falls for what she's pitching. So at Tribal Council, Chris, I didn't catch this, but apparently Chris hasn't been to a Tribal Council yet, so I gotta give Chris credit there for having gone, 22 days and now haven't gone to a Tribal Council. That's pretty huge. Dominic then tells his side of the story about the whole interaction with Chris and how basically, Dominic didn't have to say that he didn't agree with Chris's choice on day one, but at the same time, Chris's whole game is based around the fact that he couldn't take Dominic's criticism. And then Dominic then pulls out his fake idol, and Chris is then saying to everyone, it's just a shell. And Chris then tells his side of the story and says that the vote is about how the Navidi members wanted to get rid of Angela, his only alliance member, when he went to Ghost Island. I mean, of course they wanted to get rid of Angela. They couldn't get rid of Chris, so they tried to get rid of the next best thing, his only alliance member. So then he doesn't have anybody. So he doesn't have anybody else. I mean, that's smart. So Wendell then points out that when the tribes happened, Chris didn't go with Navidi. He went with the Malolos. And Chris was trying to say, no, well, I didn't trust Navidi, so I went with Malolo. So it was kind of hypocritical there. And, the merge is crazy, and the merge vote's crazy. Everyone's it's all new and everything, every man for himself. So it also could be a very idol heavy tribal council. I mean, we know Michael, Wendell, Chris, and Dominic all have idols, so all of them could play idols for all we know. And when the votes happen, it's freaking hysterical that Dominic yells out Chris's name when he's going to vote. I mean, I don't believe I've ever heard anyone do that before on Survivor. And Dominic gets up and he decides to keep his idol, which I think was smart, and use his legacy advantage that he got. And he plays it for himself, and he actually didn't need it. It looks like they all decided to go with Dominic and vote Chris out. So Chris finally got sent home, and I'm really happy this guy's gone. I feel like all my recaps this season have been about how much Chris is annoying, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so Dominic basically wasted his legacy advantage because he could have either used the legacy advantage at 13 people left in the game or 6 people, but he still has an idol, and Wendell has an idol, so they have a lot of power in the game right now. And the previews for next week show that Wendell decides to tell Laurel that he has a hidden immunity idol, and Laurel is then flabbergasted that they both have idols and thinks that Wendell and Dominic both have a lot of power in the game right now. And apparently they're bringing back the gross food eating challenge, and we haven't seen that in quite a few seasons now. I don't believe I've seen that since Blood versus Water. I could be wrong. I mean, comment down below if I'm wrong. But yeah, it should be interesting. Survivor is always interesting. So I hope you guys enjoyed Survivor tonight. If you guys want to check out Survivor, it is on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. on CBS. Until next time, stay regal.